Teachers of Reddit, what clicked about a pupil after meeting their parents. Obligatory. Not a teacher, but I work at a psychiatric hospital for children and teens. I work directly with the kids, so I don't get to meet parents often. We had a super sweet little girl on my unit once. They said it was because she assaulted her little 3-year-old sister. But the whole thing just didn't make sense. I can read kids well, and usually the ones that are violent and dangerous to family have a certain attitude. She just didn't. She was meek, respectful, and just overall the easiest patient I'd ever had. When visitation came, her parents showed up and it all started to make sense. They would just berate her for everything. Here is this little 9-year-old girl and her mom is telling her she's ducked up. Why can't she be normal? etc. etc. And this kid just took it. Not for long though, because I am allowed to remove the child at my discretion if I think it will make it worse for her, and so I did. And promptly called CPS. It turns out that all the abuse she was doing to her sister was just the mother abusing both of them and then blaming it on the little girl. You will all be happy to know that she was moved in with her grandparents in a different state and is thriving and happy. I notice quite a few negative stories here. Well, here is a positive one where it clicked. I have a student who is really friendly, really smart, and amazing at English. I am an ESL teacher abroad. She is always really friendly to me and always really hardworking. She constantly helps other kids in class who struggle with the material, and overall just a great girl. I met her dad once at a school event, and holy goodness was this guy awesome. He was a really genuine and generous character, and even invited me to get to know different parts of the city with his family. I could definitely tell they had a close bond and that he had raised her really well. Just an example of good people raising other good people. My 5th grade teacher said she understood why at times I couldn't finish my homework or fall asleep in class after seeing my mother had cancer. I'm sure before that she thought I was lazy. She became super close with my mom after, and the day my mom passed away, still in 5th grade, she cried in class when they messaged her, and that's how I knew it was over. I personally believe teachers make a huge impact in a child's life, and she really helped me out and understood. This is from back when I was doing my student teaching. There was a girl in one of my classes that never did any work in class, turned in her homework late, and would ignore huge projects until literally the last minute, and then ask to come in for help every day at lunch or after school to make up for the missing work. Eventually I caught her cheating on a quiz. She had written down the answers, put them in the plastic cover of her binder, and put her binder down by her feet. I took her quiz, gave her a 0, and told her that cheating wasn't allowed. About a week later, we had parent-teacher conferences. The girl came with her mother, who took out every assignment that had been graded and handed back, and proceeded to argue with me over individual points. Things along the lines of, well, she spelled it all right, so that deserves some credit, right, or she circled the right answer, so she should still get some credit, when that right answer had been crossed off and then another answer had been selected. This took nearly an hour to go through. Finally, the mother brought up the quiz, and I told her about the cheating. The mom said, well, you should give her some credit on it, she was pretty clever to think of that trick. From then on, I made sure to schedule meetings with myself, my mentor teacher, and the principal present. This girl in prep already showed traits of a narcissist or sociopath. She was an extremely clever but lacked empathy, manipulative, blatantly lied, stole, and so on. Yes, this might just sound like characteristics of any child, but there was definitely something different about her. Anyway, met her mom, who refused to accept that her child would do anything wrong, and when the child admitted she stole a girl's bracelet because she wanted it, her mom said, that's okay, we can go buy you one on the way home. I was telling the parent that their child was generally inattentive. He would look around, fidget, and just nod along, smiling when I knew hadn't been listening. As I was consulting my notes, I looked up to see the parent looking around the room, bouncing their leg. As soon as they realized that I was done talking, they nodded and smiled. College freshman was constantly late, didn't turn work in on time or at all, etc. She had an excuse for every single thing. I wasn't even asking. She just volunteered excuses. After getting a D in my class, which was frankly a bit generous as her actual grade was a high F, her mother called me. I wasn't allowed to discuss a student's performance with anyone, including their parents, and I told her as much. Her mother then, unprompted, gave me a long string of excuses for her daughter and, oddly, herself. I kind of thought, oh, that makes sense now. Not a teacher, but I do volunteer work for a program designed to help students who are habitually truant. Had one middle schooler who was super bright, genuinely seemed to love school, got great grades, but was absent about half the time. He was very evasive about why he wasn't coming to class, and I honestly didn't put him high on my list because he was doing fine even with the missed days. When I was finally able to get a social worker to go by his house, it turned out his, single, mother was having seizures and didn't have any healthcare, so she couldn't get treatment for them, and the kid was staying home to take care of both her and his younger brother. I felt just terrible for the kid having to be so adult while still in middle school. Kid named Rowdy. Super nice kindergartner. Wondered why the hell his name was Rowdy. Met his mom. Dad was MIA. Lived with grandma. In a hoarder house, and they smoked inside with the window closed. He graduated last spring. Saw him walking in the rain at 9 a.m, not sure where he was headed, but all I could think was he was headed in the wrong direction. I was that kid. Father worked shifts, and when he was home he was doing backyard car repairs to help make ends meet. Not because he didn't earn a good living, he actually did. But because my mother was a gambling addict. Instead of addressing the problem, he focused on solving the symptoms. I went to school from an unheated house with a mother still in bed and no breakfast in freezing weather with no coat because she spent the money on gambling. Went for years without medical treatments for the same reason. No toothpaste, no hair conditioner, no haircuts, old shoes, socks and underwear with holes, all because anything she could make us do without went to gambling. Pay was done in the frigid school gym in bare feet and a t-shirt because gym shoes and sweatshirts cost money that could be used to make bets instead. One day the vice principal called me to her office. Not to reprimand me but to give me the optional pieces of uniform I didn't have, like a coat and a school blazer. They were the options without which you froze half to death as you walked or biked several miles to school. She didn't make a big deal out of it, she simply met a need. Her act of kindness lit a spark in me. To this day, almost 40 years later, I still put money, time and hard work into caring for others and charity work. I'm the mom who will volunteer at school, quietly contribute anything the teachers are short of, that person. Not for recognition or thanks, in fact I am embarrassed if you do that. It's because nearly 40 years ago someone cared. Not a teacher but a student. In kindergarten we had this kid who was really odd and smelled funny, but he seemed cool, so we would hang out at recess. I had a birthday party and it was only supposed to last maybe a few hours. All of the kids but him went home fairly early, but it was really late and his parents still hadn't showed up. I was getting tired and wanted to go to bed, so my parents set up some blankets for us in the living room and we had a sleepover. At 2 a.m. his parents finally show up, after multiple calls with no answer. Instantly I realized what was up. Even as a small child I knew these parents were the definition of white trash. They reeked of alcohol. My mom's side of the family is full of alcoholics, so I knew what it smelled like. They also told some bullshit story about how they had new tires of their car and the speedometer showed the wrong speed and they got pulled over, and some other bullshit. It all clicked why he acted so odd and why he smelled. It was cigarette smoke. At the start of first grade he never showed up, and like a month into the year he was there for a few days. Then randomly in third grade he showed back up again for a few weeks. I never saw him again after that. I looked him up on Facebook a while back and it looks like he is following in his parents' footsteps up, falling into every white trash stereotype. I asked my parents about this kid a while ago and they said that the reason he wasn't with us in school for a few years is that he got taken away by Child Protective Services, which my mom called. Then he came back the W times because that's when his parents got him back, but he was taken away again and that's why he left us. I feel bad for the kid because at first he was really nice, but over time as I saw him again he became more mean and rude. Such shitty parents. Obviously an extreme example here, but I had a student, an 8th grader, who was quiet to the point of absolute silence, but who did extraordinarily well with the written word. A few times, he showed up with bruises, which I naturally reported, but he was adamant that they were from other students. Surprisingly, his parents came in for PTC and seemed relatively normal. Until he went to speak for himself and I saw his father grip his arm so tightly that it left a mark. I understood immediately that his parents basically didn't let him speak at all for fear of reprisal. A few weeks afterward, the kid stopped showing up to school, and word eventually got around that he got caught up in a meth lab explosion in his parents' house and was covered head to toe in 2nd and 3rd degree burns. He came back a month or so later, covered in bandages. He couldn't move, write, or really do anything without excruciating pain. I'd never cried so hard as I did that day. Sorry, I know it got off track, but there are certain stories that stick with you. Didn't actually meet the parents, but was recently told about the parents of a 9th grader I have. Apparently, the dad is super verbally abusive, constantly belittling the son. Like, bordering on reportable abuse, but just not quite over that line, his former teachers said. This kid acts out, is constantly seeking positive attention, has no self-esteem, despite being pretty smart and capable. It all just makes a lot of sense now. I'm the kid. When I was growing up, I'd get pulled aside and asked if I smoked. I'm talking elementary school. My parents, much like someone else had mentioned, smoked in the house with the windows closed. I was heavy, really heavy, with a lot of confidence issues that still stick around today. I had problems with anger growing up, not so much now, but I was an excellent student when you could inspire me to focus or found something I was passionate about. They'd meet my parents and nod to me. My dad, who would work swing and overtime every day almost to support my mom's 2 to 3 pack a day habit at the time, now it's only 1 pack, supposedly. My mom, who basically looked strung out on drugs, but was really just taking so many antipsychotics and pain meds that she might as well have been. My parents tried to be supportive of me, but I'm not sure they really knew how. I'd keep a bottle of Febreze on me starting in middle school because the questioning from teachers got worse. I'm graduating college in June, even though it's taken me twice as long as it should have, mostly because of money, a lack of guidance, and my own mental BS. I got a job working in student government for the first time ever and was sent to a conference in Washington, D.C. by my college last year. I worked my first non-minimum wage job this summer and got invited to come back with another raise. To my 4th and 5th grade teacher, if you're reading this, I'm okay, I did it, and I hope your ladybug collection has grown. One female organ student I had always wore dresses that were very revealing, both above the knee and in cleavage. When she'd sit on the organ bench for a lesson, it was almost embarrassing. I wondered why she'd insist on dressing this way until I met her parents. Her mother dressed identically, to the point where other parents would study her movements as she walked across the room at a reception after student recitals. It was a classic case of like mother, like daughter. And her father seemed to revel in it. A girl in my 7th grade class was really bright, but almost never turned in her homework, so she just skated by on test scores. One time, I commended her for helping another student who didn't understand the assignment, only to realize that night that she didn't do her own. I called her parents in and quickly realized they're the type that have an answer for everything, and were all too quick to put the responsibility on me, as if I should stand over their daughter to make sure she works. I turned to ask the girl what she thought, since she had been completely quiet, and her parents began to answer for her again. I put my finger, index, up and said, "No, you've had your turn. I want to hear what she thinks about all this." Well, she apparently really appreciated that, because she went on for about 30 minutes about all her views on education. At the end, I kept her parents quiet and told her that if she's willing to talk such a big game, she needs to back it up and do the work without her parents or me interfering. She didn't miss another assignment all year. Proud teacher moment. Had a kid that you looked at and it was very much a lights are on but nobody is home sort of feeling. I teach high school, so sometimes that's just the phase they are in, but this one was basically living perpetually in that mode. Kid has an IEP, Individualized Educational Plan, which is a legal special education doc. I can't reveal what was in there, but it was, suffice to say, generic. So it feels like there are pieces missing. Days go on, this kid is the gold standard of something is up, completely illegible handwriting to the point it doesn't resemble writing. You ask about what we are doing in class and the answer is so random and off task that if the kid didn't look and act fairly childlike for their age you would assume hardcore drug use, but this kid, if anything, had Ralph Wiggum genes and didn't know what drugs were. Mom comes to back to school night, which is supposed to be 5 minutes with the class of parents, a nice how do you do, and everyone moves on. She corners me. Immediately starts telling me about her concerns that I don't fully appreciate her miracle baby who was mute until 8, didn't walk until 4, walked backwards first, and had an IQ of about 60. They told her this kid would never make it in school, and didn't I think you just couldn't tell anything was ever delayed, because this is a miracle. That's why she blocked all mention of those conditions from the documents. Because people would never guess otherwise. Miracle. When the word miracle comes up from a parent, it always explains a lot. 9th grader thought she was entitled to an A despite her work not being A quality work, let alone B quality. Met her mom a few weeks into the school year, who happens to be on our board of directors. She also has a habit of treating teachers as if they're lesser-thans, and is essentially enabled by our school founder. On top of that, her son, a senior at the time, didn't earn college acceptance. However, our principal lied at graduation and said he'd gotten into a university he hadn't actually been admitted to. Why? Because our school is touted as a college preparatory. Can't possibly mar our good name. We had a crazy kid in 6th grade a few years back. I mean, he was the type of kid you assume will probably go on a shooting spree at some point. He was diagnosed with all sorts of acronyms or acrostics, so he was on a ton of meds. On his medicine he was defiant, but manageable. Typical class clown type stuff. Off his medicine, oh man. We could all tell when he came in the building whether or not he had taken it. It was in his eyes or something. He routinely refused to do anything and had to be physically carried, limp-bodied, to the principal's office a few times. He hit a teacher once, and called another one a bitch to her face. In the same day, we had parent-teacher night and his mom came in. She was 26. He was 12. It became clear to us that the reason he was off meds so much was because she was taking them. She had also just had another baby, so he was acting out more because of that. His mother had a very low IQ, clearly, and so did he. He ended up getting sent to alternative school eventually. Never saw him again. My best friend is a teacher. He told about this one kid's parents he met. The kid was insanely smart, 12th, genius level. He would finish his work and just play on his phone or talk to friends. But he had zero homework turn-in rate. My friend requested to meet his parents, ended up finding out that his father would beat him repeatedly, and the kid would never truly go home, but rather take up working instead of being home with his father. It was sad because the kid admitted that he was capable of doing his homework, but he was too scared to, and just didn't have to will to face his dad. Apparently later the kid came back to meet a couple teacher, including my friend. He rolled up in a BMW i8, I guess he made it out somewhere. I had a 2nd grade student who was constantly getting into pretty serious physical altercations with others, stabbing kids with pencils, slapping girls across the face, etc. The first time I met his mom was when she came up to the school threatening to choke me because I said her son couldn't come on a field trip to the pumpkin patch because he was too violent. When I was student teaching, 2nd grade, there was a little boy in the class who was just a genuinely friendly and sweet kid. He struggled a little academically when it came to learning to read and his handwriting had some problems, but he was the hardest worker and never got frustrated or thought that we was stupid, like many other students with those difficulties do. He was well liked by everyone and didn't have a mean bone in his body. And he was extremely well adjusted, despite the fact that his parents were divorced. I ended up meeting both parents separately during field trips. Both parents are extremely involved in his life and put him ahead of any of their problems they have with each other. They genuinely want what's best for him, and it shows. The dad takes him out to the sports bar for boys' night where they share root beer, which I thought was really cool. Both parents genuinely are awesome people with great attitudes, and it definitely shows in their kid. Student teaching for high school seniors and juniors. I had this guy that was a shady 80, no specific problems, just very low intelligence. But this guy worked his ass off. Never a late assignment, did all extra credit that was offered. Usually extra credit is done by those who don't need it and ignored by those who do need it. Made flashcards for like every test and quiz even though I never said to. Model student, just had low test scores. If it was an assignment that could be done with time and effort, he did it. Unfortunately tests aren't like that, and that's where he had the most problems. Back to school night comes along and I meet his dad, an NCO in the Marines. Courteous, well-spoken, and completely knowledgeable about all of his son's upcoming assignments and grades. Totally made sense. Kid is getting through with hard work and dedication and pulling off AB average. Amazing what support from parents can do. In most cases, a kid like this would probably be failing most of his classes. One of my students is safe playing. He won't try any new ideas while doing maths and would frequently look out to applying some formulas. I used to think that he genuinely is less creative than others, but at times, particularly when playing games, he would show bursts of real brilliance. When I met his mother, it clicked why. The mother burst into tears saying she was afraid what would happen if the child would fail. She really desperately wanted him to succeed, and because of this desire has all but closed his chances of success. He is so afraid of failure that he doesn't even try. There was another one. He was really afraid of both succeeding and failing. His line of thinking went like, if I succeed, the parents would expect more. So, let's fail. Then, he will flip, if I fail, they will scold me. He led a torturous life. I have a belief that the two biggest blocks in the development of a child are his school and his parents. Most of the flaws in a kid's personality can be attributed to one of the two or both. Not yet a teacher, but studying to be one in one of my major field experiences, there was a kid who was insanely competitive. He would take everything as a challenge and would accuse others of cheating if he lost. He even challenged me, a 19-year-old student at the time, to a race. I told him it really wouldn't be fair since I was fully grown, and he started berating me that I was scared to race him. Mind you, he was 9 at the time. So the end of the year is coming around and we had a field day where parents volunteered to do games for the kids, and it was supposed to be a fun day full of popsicles and school games. His parents had a relay race, spin around the bat, jump rope a certain distance, etc., and when it was his turn they encouraged him to cheat by not following their rules and got upset because some poor girl dropped the bat. Obviously meaning she would be disqualified. They also brought a tug-of-war rope and it was the girls of the class vs the boys. The girls being outnumbered, my field experience teacher put me on their team. I decided I wouldn't tug so that it was a bit more fair, but once again the student's parents started getting red-faced telling him to win. I looked at my field experience teacher and she just nodded and I pulled. Kid got knocked down a peg.